Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with one co-host this week.
I'm Joe Lalo.
And we are recording a little bit early because I'm off to the 20 Books to 50K conference in Las Vegas tomorrow. And we're going to be talking all about hopefully how to rock it in KDP Select and Kindle Unlimited. As at the request of a couple of different listeners have actually emailed in the last month or two and said, can you get some of those people on that are like killing it in the top 100 with their paranormal romances that are 99 cents, but then they're making all the all-star bonuses and stuff. So I emailed a couple of those people and they didn't email back because obviously they're too busy writing books, which is understandable. So I did make an effort. So what you're going to get instead is me, and Joe's going to chime in and ask some questions and make me clarify things, I hope.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, you guys know I didn't, up until like 2016, I was just wide and I was stubbornly avoiding it because of the exclusivity that's required. And I know that rubs a lot of authors the wrong way. And the compromise I made, because I kept seeing, people are making more money in KDP Select because of, well, you guys know, every borrow in Kindle Unlimited currently counts as a sale, so it's easier to get a borrow than a sale. So the people who are in the program get more visibility. And if you surf through the top 100 charts, in sci-fi and fantasy, and I imagine most of the fiction genres, you'll see there's like 97 out of the top 100 are available in Kindle Unlimited. So the deck is kind of stacked against you if you're not in it. I'm not saying you have to do it, but for those who are interested in it, that's kind of what we're going to talk about in this show. Not just how to enroll, that's pretty easy, check a box, but how to sell more books and get more borrows and get more page reads and stuff once you are in it. Before we jump in, I'm going to let Joe talk. Joe, do you have any news you would like to discuss?
Yeah, I got some news. It's NaNoWriMo right now, and I am doing it. Like, people who follow me know that the entirety of the Free Rent series, which has spent some months as my most successful series, every single book of it was written in NaNoWriMo. Plus the other 8, which was about superheroes, but that was a botched launch, but also written in NaNoWriMo. So I've succeeded in NaNoWriMo 6 times, and all of the 6 of those books are available for sale. I'm starting a new series, well, at least a new book, possibly a new series, this NaNoWriMo, and I'm 16,000 words into it, so I'm ahead of the pace. But that's not hard because the pace is 1,667 words a day, and that is a terrible day for me. So I upped my 3,000 word quota to 5,000 words during Nano, so I tripled the pace. Hopefully that will give me enough time to finish the story. Hopefully it stays within the ballpark of 50,000 words.
For those who out there who work full-time and think 1,600 words is an excellent day,
Yes. No, absolutely.
remember Joe and I do this full-time
Yeah,
now.
It's I spend many hours a day writing, so hopefully this will give me enough overhead that if it stays within 50,000 words, I'll be able to edit it by the end of the month, because I actually have a slot with my editor in the middle of December. So if I might be able to do a quick turnaround on this, except that I'm not going to, because the better idea would be for it to be finish 3 books and do a rapid release. So we'll see. Lots of stuff in the air, but I'm making good progress. My first official Patreon release was a couple of weeks ago, and the payments are processing now, so I'm slowly earning more knowledge in Patreon. I was just talking before the show. I was originally charging by story, but I promised only to release one thing for, like, I'm only going to charge people for something once a month, so that people wouldn't freak out if I was going to release a novel, an audiobook, and a short story in the same month and give them to various people. You're going to get charged 3 times. But then I realized, after this confused everyone on the Patreon, that if I'm only going to do one thing per month, I might as well just make it a monthly thing, which is easier to understand. So I'll be making that change in Patreon. I also learned that, at least so far, I only lost one of my patrons during the monthly rollover. So I must be doing something okay. And I also haven't started to aggressively recruit people yet. I kind of wanted to make sure I figured out all the kinks. We talked a little bit in our last one about how it's a little bit tricky to sell to give away audiobooks. Basically, is not a really great delivery vector. And a listener wrote in to Lindsay to pass on to me that Gumroad is a potential solution to this. I looked into it. It's got potential. It is a way to that you can sell digital items, and you can make them free either by just making them free, but then there's a size limit, or um, giving them a price, but then distributing full discount codes. So I haven't signed up for it yet, and I'm probably there's few enough people who are signed up at the audiobook tier. I'll probably still just use a Dropbox link for them, but this is an option that might be worthwhile if I start to grow to an unmanageably large size.
Do you have to pay to subscribe to Gumroad in order to give away your audiobooks for free?
I don't think so. I'll have to look back into it, but I don't think that there was any specific charge for that. Uh, I think there was one for if you were going to actually price for free and try to sell above a certain size, but there wasn't if you priced it but gave a discount code. Like they had their site. It wasn't like a forum thing. There was on their actual site. They had a very detailed thing talking about the pros and cons of both methods. So it's a pretty easy thing to look up. So I might look into that. I know a lot of people who sell comics using Gumroad, and also oddly enough, like digital art tools like brushes for Photoshop. So it's popular. And I guess the only other thing I have is I finished and have fully edited Big Sigma 5, which is my sci-fi series. The book's called Indra Station, and therefore it's technically ready for release. I could put it on sale tomorrow if I wanted to, but on the recommendation of the editor, I'm going to sit on it for a little bit. It's less standalone than some of the other books that I've written, so it's not a cliffhanger, but it's likely that people who read this will be very eager for the follow-up book because it doesn't end on a high note, so to speak. So I might hold on to it either until I have the follow-up almost ready, or if I can write maybe a novella to ease the transition. So that's where I am with my news.
Maybe if you at least had the next cover and the pre-order available.
Or yeah, like a chapter 1, so people know where things are going.
Yeah, and like they could order it and then maybe they'd be less
Yeah,
upset with you.
absolutely.
All right, for my news stuff, well, as I mentioned, I'm heading to the 50, what are they, 20 books to 50K conference. It's going to be this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's looking really good. They've got like BookBub people there. I'm going to meet with someone from Amazon. Kobo's always there. I know Drafted Digital. I think Mark Leslie Lefebvre and Dan Wood and Kevin Tummelson are all going to be there. So they're going to be like broing it up, wandering around in mass. I don't know. We'll see. These things are really good. I would say networking, even though I suck at that kind of thing, but just if all you want to do is like, hey, how are you doing? Here's my card. And to like one of the reps or one of the directors of self-publishing at Kobo. I think that's what those guys are called. Because yeah, Chrissy Monroe, I think will be there too. That can open some doors, and you might get on a list somewhere and start getting hey, we're having a promo, do you want to participate? So if it's ever in close enough for you and within your budget, something to consider. I am in a story bundle right now. I guess that's my thing I should pimp at the end. It's an epic fantasy story bundle, but if you're interested, there are like 13 novels that you can get for as little as $15. Kevin J. Anderson is running it. We had him on the show a couple times, so if you enjoyed those episodes and want to check out his work, this is a good chance. And there's a kind of a nice mix of trad published and indie authors in it. Storybundle.com/fantasy is the link. For myself, I published my 4th book in my Agents of the Crown series. This series has done okay. It's I think I mentioned before on the show, it came out of like hanging out with my beta reader, people who started out as beta readers and have become good friends in real life now, and we all got together in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where everybody goes for retreats. And so this came out of that, and a couple of them are possibly going to still write stories for it. We'll see. They were going to write something while I was writing something, and I was just going to write one novel, but why write one when you can write 5? So that's where I am. I just sent the 5th one, final one, off to my editor today. And like I said, they've done pretty well, actually. I think the covers ended up pretty cool, considering they're kind of high fantasy mystery, I guess you would call it, maybe, with a romance over the 5 books. So it's high fantasy, epic fantasy is kind of hard. One of those ones where there are lots of tropes, but there are also lots of things that just get lumped under that. So I'm in there, I'm in the mix somewhere, and it's doing okay. It's not killing it as much as my Heritage of Power series with the dragons, of course, did earlier in the year. But I actually, probably you noticed, it was the end of October. So that is kind of the point in the year where we can figure out what we made for the year, because your October money, you're going to get paid at the end of December. So, I usually go add things up and just make sure I have enough money put aside for taxes, nothing crazy. And so I did that, and I was kind of curious. I have Book Report now, which everybody has. So it makes it a lot easier to, at least in Amazon, you can see what you earned. It's always, I have to remember there's more money elsewhere. So when figuring stuff out for taxes, I'm always very careful to put aside like 50%. So I've never been in trouble, but I am always like worried about it anyway. I don't know why, but it's like one of those things. You do not want to make the IRS angry here in the United States. And so income was good. This was actually ended up being kind of my second best year. 2016, I had my Fallen Empire series did really well. That was the first thing I put in KU, which we're going to be talking about. And since then, I've been launching my series in KU. And I eventually take them off once things drop off, or once I have a new series going in. And that's been kind of the best of both worlds for me. I still do have folks that complain when new releases aren't available, but as you know from previous shows, if you've listened, I have a Patreon where I put the e-arcs out a week or two early in all formats so that's like a way around it before it goes into KDP Select. And anyway, the point I wanted to make that I thought was interesting was that I added up what this year's releases, how much of my income came from that. Because, you feel like you have to keep writing books constantly. Am I right, Joe? Or you're just going to disappear into obscurity.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way.
So I was pleased that it was about 50-50. Stuff I published this year was about half of the income. And then my backlist, which has gotten pretty big at this point, was about half of the income. So obviously sales of the front list helped boost the backlist because people find new stuff and then go check out your old stuff. But it's reassuring that my backlist alone could have made me a really nice income this year. So good to know that I could probably keep things at least somewhat going just by, if you can get a couple BookBubs, or I'll do the free days in KU and try to get like a free Booksy or some of the smaller stuff. So I guess that is the extent of that news. Shall I jump in, Joe? Do you have any comments?
Yeah, we can get started. So because Lindsay's going to be doing most of the talking, I'm going to ask the questions.
But wait, we should ask you, because you've talked a couple times on here, I think, about maybe doing an urban fantasy. Are you thinking of doing that into KDP Select?
I actually am. Yeah, like this is another thing we talked about before the show, I think last week. My plan is when I'm done, if this thing feels like it's got legs, like if people who read it say like, yeah, this is on par with your other series, this is a thing that we really like, then I'm probably going to try to write the 2 additional ones, and then I think I'm going to release into Kindle Unlimited, not exclusively. It'll probably end up after 1 cycle or 2 cycles, however long seems appropriate. I'll pull it back wide, but I think this will be the first time I'm going to try doing like a Kindle Unlimited release. We'll see, because if it turns out it doesn't have any legs, it's going to be another Pizza Dragon type thing. That it's not very scientific to decide, well, I guess KU is terrible because I wrote this oddball book that nobody likes and
Right.
nobody bought it.
It's kind of like when traditional publishers try self-publishing, but they do some like obscure novella that they wrote 20 years ago that doesn't tie in with any of their other stuff. And they're like, well, obviously self-publishing is way overrated.
Yeah.
So you have to go, if you're going to do it, commit to doing a series in it.
Yeah, that's my plan, and we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be a while anyway, because there's this entire month just to see how the first book goes, and then if it goes well, there's going to be 2 more books. So however long that takes. But yeah, KU, I think, is the great KU experiment is going to be a thing that probably takes place in 2019 for me.
Well, we should say, I didn't say where Jeff was, but I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that listens that I said, hey, Jeff, do you want to skip it? It's all about Amazon this week.
Yeah,
And he actually sold his house, so he had some stuff to do this weekend, but I think he was relieved not to sit here and have nothing to say.
just make faces in
Yeah.
the corner. All right. So yeah, we're going to be talking Kindle Select, and the first question is Kindle Select right for you? Is KU right for you?
All right, well, I'll take my stab, and you're welcome to chime in too, Joe, since you've obviously considered it for a while too. You're probably like me in that you maybe thought about it for a couple years before actually
Very
making the
much
leap.
so.
I even tried it. Actually, I should say I did it in 2014 with my pen name. She's been all in almost since the beginning because I wanted to play with it, and also it was easier. You didn't have to upload files everywhere for a name that was an experiment. But so, you guys probably already thought of it. It's just your personal considerations and how much they mean. Like, some people are really against supporting Amazon's bid for, the exclusivity thing is what really bothers everybody, and you're kind of supporting that if you go in there, and you're maybe possibly hurting the other retailers or just making it that much harder for them to be a real good competitor for Amazon. And you're basically saying, okay, Amazon, you control all of my income. Although if you do it kind of like I'm doing, if you have multiple series and you eventually move stuff out, then it's less of a concern. My wide income hasn't gone down as a result of launching new stuff. I've talked about before, I just end up doing a second launch when I take everything wide. But whether you, a lot of people actually stay in and have all their eggs in one basket, so to speak. Although that's not necessarily true, because you can still do audiobooks and publish them wide, and you can still do paperbacks. But we all know if you're self-publishing ebooks, you're probably like 90% of your income. So it's just how you feel. If you can make so much money in Amazon KU that you're able to sock a bunch of it away and you're not worried about it. But we have seen enough people get kicked out, even if it's, sometimes it's temporary, there was a mistake and they get their accounts back. But there's certainly been some people that are disappeared and have not come back. And so if you were making 6 figures a month and all of a sudden you just bye-bye, that's hard, especially if you really started spending that money and bought some stuff and racked up some debt. So that's just what you need to consider. If it's, are you willing to do it? And if you're not willing to do it, then, that's fine. But can you do better exclusive and in Kindle Unlimited than being wide in all the other stores? And unfortunately, it's kind of a unique thing because some series and some genres have the potential to do well on the other sites. I have definitely found that I've made like 100K plus months now. That did not happen until I jumped into KU and started launching series that way. And I'm higher overall since I started doing that, even when like things fall off and I don't have the next series ready to put in it yet. So that's, it's hard to say no to that money. Why wouldn't you take advantage of it if you can? And if the other stuff doesn't bother you. And, it's really just up to you. Not everybody does well in KU, so that's another thing. It's not like it's a guarantee, oh, if I put my novel in there, it's obviously I'm going to make 20,000 this month. Maybe if you really know what you're doing, or you got a good fan base and you've been doing this for a while. But it's a gradual thing. And I do want to encourage those who may be like sighing because they don't want to do this, that I actually did my best-selling series ever, the Dragon Blood series, the original 8, there's now 8 books. That's maybe most out of all time, forever and ever. It was not my first series, so it's not like it's just been out there the longest. And it never spent a day in Kindle Unlimited. So that's just, it is possible still to do well without being in there. It's just, like I said earlier, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle. So.
Now, here's a question. Like, when you were when you went when so you started off wide, and then you started taking stuff into KU, with the exception of your pen name, which started off in KU. How much money proportionally was Amazon responsible for in your income? Like, was it more than half?
Yeah, so that's another thing to consider. If you're like right now, half your money comes from Apple, then maybe that's not something you want to look at. I feel like with most people, even like I promote all the stores. Well, now obviously I can't if I'm doing a launch and it's in
Right.
KU, but I would say like, here's my Kobo links, here's my Apple links, here's everything. Now I use the books to read links because that's a little easier, but I used to send out the newsletters with just, here's everything, even Smashwords. So I would try, but they're just such smaller stores that if you're doing well on Amazon to any degree, it's probably a much larger chunk of your income. And I would say I was probably around 80, 85% from Amazon, even when I was wide.
Yeah, in my case, and it's why I sort of haven't done it yet. My income some months is like 60% non-Amazon, And but that's not so much because I'm doing so much better wide, it's because I've been steadily decreasing in Amazon as I'm not wide, so my ranking sort of suffers. So it's one of those situations where could I be making 90% of my income from Amazon if I had anything doing well in KU? So again, it's gonna be an interesting experiment if I pull this off next
Yeah,
year.
and that's part of why I felt pressured too in the beginning. Is like you're like, well, my stuff doesn't stick anymore. Because all these other books are just getting borrows, and that's like a free download once people are subscribed. So there is that too to consider, whether you're just not able to launch as well as you used to because you're not in KU.
Yep. Okay. The next section is what is your strategy and why?
All right, well, let's just talk about a couple launch strategies. I think folks have probably know by now that I've switched to doing the rapid release. I'll like save up the first 3 books and then publish those back to back, 1 to 2 weeks apart, and then try to get books 4 and 5 out just a month, or maybe sometimes it ends up being 6 weeks because at that point I've caught up with my writing and publishing have caught up. And I found that's very effective. I mean, for several reasons, and some of it I think you get some intangible stuff that's hard to define. Part of it's just you get this momentum going. If book 1 sells, then people can immediately go on and buy the other books. I feel like there's a lot less reader attrition also. If the books are already available, and they enjoyed the last one, it's a no-brainer. But if they're a voracious reader, especially a lot of these Kindle Unlimited folks are reading a book a day, if they finish and then the next one's not available, they may forget. I just find that the sell-through is so much more when the books are available, but if you have to wait a few months and then you publish the next one, you do get some catch up, right? Because you got these people on your mailing list, hopefully, but it's just not as good. It's better if it's there for them to buy as soon as while 1, 2, and 3 are still selling really well. So I've found that it's worth holding back and releasing quickly. And a lot of people have discovered that. So that's nothing new. And then you may increase your visibility just because you've got more books in the top 100s, hopefully, at a time. And you may have depending on if you qualify for more categories, one book may be, is space opera, and one book over here is space fleet. There's a zillion of them in sci-fi. But maybe this book 3 was totally about genetic engineering, so you can throw book 3 in there and catch people looking in those categories. So just the momentum, and if you can get into the top 100 list, the rapid release can be helpful with that stuff. And if you're doing something every month, you could potentially be in the hot new releases, an extra spot to be visible every month. And also you're kind of focusing your income too. Like I've talked about having 100K months. Well, I was releasing 3 books, and so I've got like 3-4 months in a row where the income is awesome. But of course, the 3 months while I was writing them, I was coasting off of the last project. So it's I feel like you make more that way overall, but if you were spreading it out, you'd make less each month, and maybe you would have fewer peaks and valleys. But like I said, I've earned more overall gross income, and I don't do a whole lot of advertising. So for me, I'm usually only it's depressing when I do my taxes. I'm like, what can I write off? What can I write off? And I'm like at 7% of the total I can take off for editing and advertising and covers and all that. But so that's an advantage to the rapid release. And then the last one too is if you want the all-star bonuses, that's when I've gotten them, is because of my method is not to have everything in. If I did, it would be easier to get the cumulative ones, obviously, because I'd have more books to have in the pile to get page reads each month. But the way I do it, since it's usually only one series in there, that series has to make enough page reads if you want to get a bonus. And people talk about them, they're kind of insignificant by the time you can qualify for the lowest one, which is $1,000 in the US, 500 in the UK, and I haven't got in Germany or the other countries, so I'm not sure there. You made so much in KU that it's kind of like, well, I'll take the money, but it's not that great. But I know at the top they can make 10,000 or something like that. I've not gotten there, so I don't know what it takes to get in that. There's like a tier. They give out 100 bonuses for cumulative, and then they give out bonuses for page reads per one book. And if you did not know, if you've got a pen name or you're co-authoring with other people, you're not going to get it all counted. It's not per account, it's per name. So That's an FYI. That I didn't realize at first, but I was like, oh man, my pen name books aren't going to count toward it. But just the point is that if you rapid release, you have a better shot of having maybe 3 books doing well enough, especially if you're writing sci-fi and fantasy like a lot of us are. These are not categories where you're most likely going to launch in the top 100 overall on Amazon. So all those books that are in the top 100, if they're in KU, you're competing against them. But another strategy which makes more sense for people who are day job, just writing when they can, maybe can do 2 books a year or maybe 4 books a year if they're pretty prolific, is just to be slow and steady about it. And I can definitely see that work. I feel like my whole career has just been I'm still here, like a lot of the people I saw, and Joe probably remembers names too from K-Words and stuff back in 2010, 2011. Some of them killed it, had like some bestseller that sold 2 million copies in or this was before KU, but in Amazon. And you look up those authors now and they're either gone or they wrote a couple different genre random things 3 years apart. So there's nothing wrong with slow and steady. And if you are going to go that way and you want to do KU, I would try maybe if you could get something out every quarter just to kind of keep the momentum going. I feel like if you go this route, you do have to, a lot of the people who would succeed this way, because we've had some of these folks on the show that they're making good income on like 1 book a year, but you got to put more effort into marketing, advertising, even if it's just social media and free stuff, that more time into it, more effort than I feel like if you release a lot, that kind of, I wouldn't say completely replaces advertising, but like I said, I don't spend a lot on advertising, especially outside of launches. And it's not that I wouldn't if I couldn't make it work, I've said on the show before, this is not where I'm not a genius in this area, but also at some point the time investment, and it's more profitable for me to write more books rather than to dink around with trying to get ads to work well on Amazon. So what I would not do as a launch strategy is the sporadic, here's a book 1 year, here's a book in another genre the next year, there's nothing the 3rd year. So if that's you, start thinking, Joe, you're not that bad. You don't have to laugh. You're right. You publish plenty.
Yeah. I do 1 book a year in each genre. So like
Well,
three
there you
books a
go.
year, 1 in each genre.
Well, it's just harder to get anywhere that way. And if you are going to try KU with your 1 book that you're going to release this year, just try it for like the 90 days. You never know. I mean, it's not like 1 book. The Martian was 1 book, right? It's not like lightning can't strike. But for most people, you're just going to have trouble without a little bit of momentum and uh, being regular. Being regular is always important. Regularly releasing things, even if it's every 6 months instead of every month. So, all right, let's move on.
All right. I should add in here something I perpetually forget. The German translation that we've talked about that has done very well in the past. I had 1 spectacularly good quarter with the German translation, and it is in KU. I got to talk to my publisher to find out what it was, because I got a sizable all-star bonus, and I only get because it's published by someone else, so I only get my share of the royalty share of the all-star bonus. So it might have been one of the higher ones. I should ask what the page read count was, but that was several years ago. Things have probably changed twice since then.
Yeah, I think it was definitely easier the farther back you go. The newer KU was like it used to be like 1 or 2 million page reads was all you needed to make an all-star bonus, probably like 2 million. I think the last time I hit it was like 5 or 6 million for the lowest tier. So it's definitely gotten more competitive.
All right. So next we're going to talk about what are the pricing considerations if you're doing something in KU.
All right. Well, and this is why I like interviewing lots of different people on the show, because we've seen people do 99 cents for a book 1 in KU. We've seen people that just go ahead and launch at $4.99 with everything, and both people do really well. I feel like I've been doing 99 cents with my book 1s because I never do less than fewer than 5 books in a series. Some of them, my Fallen Empire series ended up with 8 novels and I guess I'll call it a spin-off. It was like 3 years later with a different character, and then a spin-off series, which I need to finish. But so if it's worth losing money on that first one if you can get them into the series, I always feel. And with 99 cents, you're not limiting yourself to just the KU people. I think a lot of people will pick you up as an author they don't necessarily know, but it looks like an interesting book. Whereas at $4.99, if they don't already know you and love you, I think that's not going to be an impulse buy for most people. Maybe they'll grab a sample. But what is interesting is that I've seen more people can get more indie authors. We usually price lower than traditional publishing, no secret there, because we make 70%. So, we're making more per book and we can charge less. It's sort of the best of both worlds. But I feel that before KU came along, it was a little harder for an indie author to charge $4.99 for a book one and get a lot of traction out of the gates on the launch. Now that KU is there, you're actually probably driving more people to borrow it if you're doing a high price book. And to them, it's even looking like, wow, for my $10 a month, I'm getting a bunch of $4.99 books. So it's like more worth my money than this 99-cent book. And I don't really know how you would test it. All I can say is I've seen authors do both routes, and it can work both ways. I think the people that succeed with like the $5 book ones and all the books full price are the folks, I want to say, they're like doing the military sci-fi, and they're consistent, or space fantasy. I know we had Glenn Stewart on a couple times with the mix of the fantasy and space, but just consistently always publishing in the same genre and publishing pretty quickly. So they've already built up an audience. And then I've admitted before that I don't always publish in the same genre, so it's a challenge. You're making hurdles for yourself. So if your artist self says do that, sometimes you have to listen. But so I personally have found that if I don't put book one at 99 cents with my fantasy and sci-fi, that the sales ranking drops more quickly. So I've just 99 cents for book one is okay for me because I have book 2 and 3 already out. So, that's just for me personally. It doesn't mean you can't make it work at full price. I've also seen, but not tried yet, several different people I've heard have launched their first book into KU using the KDP. They give you 5 free days a month or a quarter if you want to promote stuff. And there's nothing that says you cannot use those 5 free days at the launch to try to get things rolling. Maybe you want to get a whole bunch of reviews at once. You just want to let people try the series for free, whatever. But I've kind of heard from, I would say, 4 or 5 different stories now of folks that have done this and had success where they hadn't previously had success launching at full price or even 99 cents. So if anybody out there tries that and you're doing good, let us know. Again, if you're doing the rapid release, it may be okay to lose sales on book one. When I did my Fallen Empire series, which as I mentioned has actually that was my best year ever, I gave away 1,000 copies of the first book to my mailing list because at that point I'd only written fantasy and I wanted to get them to try. I'm like, come on guys, try my sci-fi. It's okay. There's still space battles and good fun stuff, sarcastic engineers, all the stuff you like. So giving away free, I wouldn't dismiss it if it sounds at all intriguing for you. Just remember that, every now and then there's this stuff like I value my work at too much to ever give it away free or 99 cents. But it's really like if you can make a lot more money over the course of the whole series, it's really about what you take home each month, not what one book sells for. It right now, at any given time, I've probably got 6 or 7 books free, either book ones and series starters or something that's a sale or like some bonus thing I did for people and I just threw out there for free. So those are a few pricing strategies. Joe, if you do urban fantasy, what are you going to price book one at?
I will probably do a 99-cent release. Chances are the first book will be shorter than the rest because it's going to be a nano book and the follow-ups won't. So I'll probably allow myself to let them grow a little bit out of control. So I'll probably do the lower price for the launch and then maybe hike it up to a standard price or maybe leave it at 99 cents. I'm not sure. I've my career to this point has been largely driven by perma-free. My 3 main series all have perma-free series starters. So I definitely understand the value of free, but in like having never tested KU, I'm going to have to, mess around a little bit. But yeah, I think 99 cents is probably the way to go for me. Now, we talked about this a little bit, but what are your thoughts on focusing on one genre and releasing frequently or at least consistently?
Yes, we did just kind of talk about this and how much easier you're making it for yourself if you can just fall in love with that, swords and sorcery genre or the urban fantasy or the military sci-fi and not jump around. I feel like you can get away with a little bit jumping from sci-fi to fantasy because there is more crossover with the readers than, say, erotica and thrillers. I don't know, maybe, it just seems like maybe we're so used to sci-fi and fantasy being in the same bookstore section that, but I've certainly got folks that only read my sci-fi and others that only read fantasy because they're just not interested in the other genre. So you are making it more difficult on yourself. Just accept that if you do jump genres a lot. I think Joe might agree with me here because I think we've kind of had the same experience where I thought early on too, I was like, well, I'll do one book in this one and then one book over here in the steampunk series, and that will keep things fresh for me and, it'll be fun. But I've really found that if you can write one series like from start to finish and just publish it, fairly regularly and then jump genres if you're going to, that it's just easier because you can throw all your money and effort into promoting that one series and it's worth it because there's 8 more books or however many you write for them to go on and read. But if you're jumping around, like I was saying, I just feel you get this attrition where people forget about you. If they're reading a lot, if they're in KU especially, they're those voracious readers, so it's tougher.
Yeah, and you also run into, even if you're doing reasonably well with things with a lot of crossover, like my stuff is sci-fi, fantasy, and steampunk, which has got a pretty good crossover. If you do the thing where you're doing an annual release in each series, you end up in a situation like I'm in where you're at book 5 of 3 series at the same time. And series start to peter out as they get past, 5 to 8 books. 5 to 8 books is about as long as series tend to go when you're writing in a series. So if you're getting into late series with 3 consecutive releases in 3 different genres, you can start to dig yourself a hole. So writing a series to completion has got a benefit in that you will be starting a new thing reasonably soon, as opposed to the next 2 releases are also going to be late series releases.
Yeah, and it's very hard to, after a while, you guys know if you've been doing it for a while that you've already hit all the sites. Yeah, I already got a book club on that last year, so I can try again, but I might not get another one. And I might have already gotten all the readers have seen it, seen my promos. We have more places to advertise than we used to, but it's still, it can be tough to just you start to feel like you've exhausted an audience, even though that's probably not true. It just seems like it's easier if you have a fresh book one that you can start from scratch with and throw everything behind.
Absolutely. Okay, so next subject is writing to a hungry market.
Yeah, I just had a couple thoughts on this that I wanted to share for those who are interested in it. We've kind of talked about how Joe and I are both, we know what we should write if we wanted to like really sell like hotcakes in theory, but we tend to write what we want to write, and I feel I'm fortunate in that my stuff is at least commercially viable enough that I am able to get a readership. It's not like a high fantasy mystery is super weird. There have been ones traditionally published. It's just maybe not as on the point as when I did the half dragon character who was destined to be great kind of thing, although even that story had airplanes and a more modern world than is traditional. So, but if you are interested in writing to market, I would definitely pick up Chris Fox's book, Write to Market. We've had him on the show. You could check out the old episodes. And I would actually say is not just write to market, but write to a hungry market. And that's kind of what he talks about in the book is how to identify the categories on Amazon, basically, where there is usually not a big traditionally published presence. So that's kind of a clue right away. It's maybe this is too small of a niche for them to be that interested in, but that doesn't mean it can't be insanely profitable for an indie author putting out 6 novels a year in that niche. And then, but if you browse through and kind of figure out stuff that, if you get to the top, the 100th book, and it's like under 2,000 in the whole store, that's pretty competitive. That's like, I think Epic Fantasy has gotten to that point where it's 2,500 or something just to make the list. Urban fantasy, I haven't looked for a while, but that one's usually even harder to get on the list. So if it's going to be hard to even get any visibility on that top 100, and you're a newer author and you haven't had that kind of success yet, so you're not pretty sure launch is going to put you into that spot, it might be worth shelving that project for now. If you have another project where like, hey, look here, there's a lot of people buying these first few books in this category, but if you, it only takes like 50,000 in the whole store in order to make the top 100, that could be a sign that it's kind of a hungry market. And it's just, you know, we've had, like I said, we've had shows on that before, and Chris's book will say it better than I can. So check that out if you haven't. But that's the kind of thing that can do really well in Kindle Unlimited. And I would say right now too, I don't think Chris mentioned in his book because it was a couple years ago, there are people spending a lot of money on advertising to keep their books in those top 100s right now. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you looking in from the outside are going to have a hard time knowing, is this book in the top 100 because this is the tropes, this is striking people's fancies, or is it maybe a little bit of that, and then, oh, over here they're spending 5,000 a month because they're making 20,000 a month from their series. And it's hard to know that. So I would kind of actually recommend popping over to like the Amazon Canada store or the Amazon Australia store, because there's no AMS ads there, I don't believe, at this point. And it may be a little more, I don't say honest, there's nothing dishonest about advertising, but it may be easier to see what kind of stuff is selling without Amazon ads. And usually people don't target that stuff too much with Facebook ads too. I think the savvy folks do, but it's just you might see what covers are selling, you know, what tropes are selling, and check out those books.
Yep.
And go ahead.
We done with that part?
Yes, I'm talking too much as usual.
That leads pretty smoothly into, can niche stuff sell? Like we talked a bit about hungry markets and writing to market. What about the stuff that's not necessarily a mainstream market?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about this because it's sort of a given that the hungry market that's not, you know, traditional publishing isn't getting into that much is a really good thing to target. But for those of us that write maybe pizza oven dragon stories or something a little less mainstream where maybe the audience is smaller, you know, I think that's ones you wonder, can this work in Kindle Unlimited, or is this really only for people who are writing to market? And I do think part of it is that you need to be, you know, people will try stuff in Kindle Unlimited because it's like a free book for them, basically, like we were saying. But some stuff, like I'm putting my notes, if you are going to write steampunk fantasy lesbian romance, you're probably going to have a hard road. And I'm not saying that to make fun of that. It's just that lesbian romance for some people is like a hard no. Like, no, I'm just not at all interested in that. It's going to be the people looking for lesbian romance are like super excited because they're you, but they may not be the KU people, or there may not be enough of them in KU to make it even worth being in the program. And you can experiment for 90 days and find out. And that's not the only thing, but there are things, you know, niches that are hard nosed for people. It's something to them that's like, no, that's not intriguing at all. I don't want to read about that. Whether it's fair or not is not the question, really. It's just, that's how it is. And then there's other things I would say, like lit RPG. I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, I have no idea what the heck that is. Oh, but look, there's like a unicorn on the front. And so then they read the description and like, oh, I like gaming stuff. Maybe I'll give this a try since it's free. And that's a genre, or I guess a little niche you would say, that we've seen do really take off in the last couple of years. And I think that's part of it. It's super niche, but nothing that, I don't want to say offend people, but you know how people are. Like, you have your opinions. Like, if you're this political thing, you just don't want to read a story about this other political thing. So if your niche is just kind of quirky and unique, but it isn't going to rub anybody the wrong way, then it might work. And I would just say, try it. Like I said, it is nice that you only have to commit to the 1 quarter.
Yes, indeed. And it's interesting, the example that you gave. If people are faithful readers of my stuff, then you might find that book 4 of my free rent series bears a striking resemblance to that, except perhaps with the edges shaved off
By
a
the
little bit.
time you get book 4, they're
Yeah,
into
people
it,
are
you know?
invested.
So
Yeah,
it's like, and you're not like clicking all the categories with book 1 that clues them off.
exactly. Okay, so next up is making more money off page reads. This is, I mean, you're making the entire point of KU is to make money off of page reads, but making more money off of page reads is occasionally a minefield. So what should people know about that?
Right. And it's interesting because, or I don't know if it's interesting, but to me it was interesting because I didn't get into it for the page reads money. I got into it because, like I said, I felt pressured. Like it was harder to get into those top 100s because I wasn't in KU and I wasn't getting borrowed. So that was my main reason for jumping in and experimenting with it. But right now, anyway, and I guess I'm a pessimistic half glass half empty person. I don't think it's going to last. But right now, the money is good. And I don't think authors realize quite how good it is. If you can, some people writing 700 page epic fantasy are making like $7 for a borrow of a book that they're selling for 99 cents or 2.99. And I don't think that's going to last. But right now, it's possible. If you're getting millions of page reads, you're getting tens of thousands of dollars a month just from KU, in addition to whatever sales you get on Amazon. So there's certainly money there, and that's why so many people are like, oh, let me see if I can tinker with things, and we'll see if we can game the system. And no surprise, I'm going to advise you not to do that. Not only because you're cheating other authors if you do that, because it's a pool that everybody gets paid out of, but just because Amazon's cracking down. And you've got some really smart watchdog folks out there who are doing a great job. Like David Gaughran is always if there's scamming going on, he seems to have a beat on it, and he reports it on his blog. And I think the Amazon people may actually listen to him. So there's people watching, because like I said, other authors are getting cheated if somebody does that. So of course they're going to not want to allow that. So avoid anything that is bonus material or weird formatting, or don't be tempted to try to jigger things to make your KENPC longer, just because even if you ethical stuff aside, you might get caught and then you lose that income possibly forever. So that's not worth it. What is probably okay is to add, I think they allow up to 10% of like a first chapter of the next book if you're trying to get people to read on, which I fully recommend if you're doing something like romance where the next book is a different couple, and it wouldn't necessarily be an automatic buy because the story in book 1 was resolved. That's a good time to throw a bonus chapter in and try to get them hooked right there. And you can do questions and answers and afterwards things like that it sounds like you can do up to 10% or so. I kind of say, like, the test is, would you be adding this stuff if the book was not in KU? And if you can't honestly answer yes to that, then maybe just check on whether it's worth doing. It's just, sometimes some of the people that were caught for scamming, they were selling so many books. You kind of have to wonder, like, wow, why would you risk it? Why wasn't it enough to make 50,000 a month in page reads? I don't know. I cannot answer that question. But legitimate ways to get more page reads, which is, to get people to read to the end of the book, is the craft stuff, right? It's if you write a page turner, or if you're doing epic fantasy, write a really engaging, sprawling epic that gets people sucked in there. And then, like I said, right now you can make more from a borrow than you can from a sale on a big meaty book. And there's nothing wrong with teasers or cliffhanger endings to get them to move on to the next book. You may get some slack from fans, but they'll probably buy it anyway. I've certainly done some cliffhangers, and I kind of like, I'm not sure that I would do that again going forward. I always say that, and then I end up doing one anyway. But one thing I like is having an overarching story arc, and each book is an individual story and feels like a complete novel, so they're satisfied. But then maybe you've got a romance or some other problem that's carrying the rest of the story, and you can kind of tease that thing at the end to get them to go on to the next book. So those are legitimate, nothing wrong with craft stuff to try to get people to read to the end.
Yeah, it's definitely like an excellent idea to just maintain good craft in general. Like all of this advice really only works if your books are worth reading, you know? So you can come up with all the different methods to get your books in front of eyeballs, but if those eyeballs don't like what they see, then not going to work in the long run.
Right, and that doesn't get emphasized enough probably in our community, and you'll see people like completely that cannot see that their books have a 3-star review average on Amazon, and then there's like the reviewers are listing the problems, and then they're on keyboards like, I don't understand, why is my stuff not selling more, guys? It sold more last year. I'm like, well, the
People,
people didn't come
word it
back for
out.
more.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. So now we're going to move on to some listener questions. The first question we have here is from Dale. I'm currently Y, but I'm considering KU for my next series. So my question, what are some approaches / tactics, etc., for succeeding in KU when you are not rapid releasing?
All right, well, we kind of talked about this a little bit. The slow and steady can work. You might just have to put more effort into advertising. Even if you let things drop off between releases, just be prepared to kind of gear everything up and advertise book 1 again when you put the next book out in the new series. And I do that to some extent anyway, even with the rapid release stuff. So it's just, maybe accepting that, well, I'm not going to get all-star bonuses probably, and that's okay. The people getting those, like I said, they're publishing, if not more than a book a month, if not a book a month, more than a book a month. And it's also something to be aware of too, is that some of these people are more than one person, which I was so disappointed to find that out. I mean, I don't know why, but like a romance author was like 5 people and one was writing each month, but they were only writing 2 books a year, but they had to release every month. And I guess what disappoints me is like, I would like to think that my style and everything is distinct enough and unique enough and is what people like, that they would be terribly disappointed if the style mysteriously changed in the next book. And I don't know. Anyway, keep doing what you're doing, Dale. You're
Yeah.
doing good. And just be prepared to continue advertising it. A slow trickle can work in that kind of situation.
It's worth pointing out, and this is true of basically anything that's algorithm driven is basically rewarding people for burning themselves out. Like if you follow YouTubers, the people who are making like millions of dollars on YouTube are putting out multiple videos a day. Like the algorithm treats the algorithm as a computer and thinks that you're a computer. So
Why
sort of
are we
keep that
not
in
all
mind.
computers? I don't understand.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is from Greg. This is a 2-part question. I'll ask them separately. Number 1, is there a sweet spot for how many books to have in a series before profit / page reads start falling off?
All right, and you can answer this too because you've had experience with this. I find that it's another one, I hate to say, it's just different for every series and every author. You've got some genres and styles of series that can support a 20-book series, especially if there's stuff that somebody can jump in at book 17 and not be lost. Whereas if you've created this arc and then you get to book 8 and it's kind of complete and then you're like, well, this is selling well, so I'm just going to keep writing some more. I think that's when you might find that people start saying things like, oh, you're just milking it for the money at this point. But it's a lot. This is why we've talked about before, maybe having a bailout plan with the series. Like if this does really well, I could make the story make 10 books or 20 books, depending on what you're passionate about. But if it's not selling that well after 5 books, I could theoretically close it off at book 6. So unfortunately, it's just different with every series and author. I tend to think, for me, 8 books is about tops, but that may be more, that's where my interest wanes, because we've certainly seen, I'm going to this conference, and Michael Andrelé is the one that started all this stuff, and I think his first series has 21 books, and then he did like a spin-off series and collaborations and everything. So if you're still excited about it, you keep going. And and then you have to gauge too, is it selling or has the interest fallen off? Because you are kind of stuck with most series just advertising book 1 over and over again, as we talked about. And you can do a box set, and that's kind of a different book 1 to advertise. But for series that don't stand alone, that can be tough to keep the sales coming in.
Yeah, I can just say, like, a personal point of experience here. One of the major things that will cause it to start falling off is if you finish the major arc. Like, the Book of Deacon series was written as a trilogy. There are 5 numbered books in it now, but if you were to look at my sales across the board, there's a huge drop off comparatively between books 3 and book 4, because book 1, 2, and 3 tell a complete story that feels like a complete story, and then book 4 and book 5 continue the story, and they still do reasonably well, but lots of people aren't even aware of them because they get to book 3, the epic quest is completed. Okay, let's get on to the next epic quest. So if you do finish a story arc and you realize you want to keep trying to sell, you had better have buried some threads that you can tug on that people feel like connect it to the earlier books, or you're going to start to have attrition.
I had the same experience with Dragon Blood. I wrote 7 books and things wrap up nice and tidy in the 7th book. And then like 3 years later, that's another thing too. If you wait, then nobody even remembers anymore, And so I just wanted to write it because it was fun, and it paid for itself. It certainly sold well enough that I don't regret it or anything, but I did like a wedding book basically for the 2 main characters in the previous series. But yeah, I had no threads that were left unresolved except that they weren't married. So there you go. For those that wanted that, it was there. But yeah, I agree that when I look at it later, I think it'll be the same thing where book 8 sells a lot less than the previous ones.
Yep. Okay. The second question is it better to offer a standalone freebie or a more sequel-light novella for the funnel / build list building / etc.?
Okay, so my understanding of this is basically sequel novella to the series, or maybe I guess I would say I would be more likely to do a prequel or a background story on an interesting character from the series that can stand alone, but is also answering questions that were seeded in the main story. So it's the best of both worlds. You can get new readers that way if you're doing Insta freebie or some promos to try to use that to lead into to your main series. That's why I'm a big fan of the prequela, the prequel novel, that is still a standalone story. So it can work for both ways, as to entice folks who already read the book to get on your list so they can get that, or to get new people randomly off the internet that read that and like it and then want to read your series and later get on your list maybe.
Next question is from MJ. And she asks, would you lean more towards Facebook or AMS ads if you wanted to focus on driving up page reads and brand building?
Okay, I'm going to say those are 2 really different things. Page reads is a really concrete thing that you're trying to get as a direct result from the ad click, whereas the brand building is kind of like, well, if they see your book enough times, maybe they'll go check it out and it'll become familiar to them. And I would actually say I don't really like brand building. I'm not even worrying about that. I just want people to come check out my book. And the more people I get to read my first book, if it's in KU, like we've talked about, it's essentially free for them with their subscription, or if it's a perma free book one, I just drive people to that. So whatever is most effective for that. I'm not saying there's nothing to be gained from building your brand and becoming someone that people recognize, but that's really just going to come more so with a ton of sales than oh, I saw this book 7 times on Facebook and that was the magic number, so now I'm going to check out this author. And right now it kind of depends if you just want to go for page reads and kind of targeting people that are in the Amazon ecosystem. The AMS ads are probably going to work. I wouldn't say they work best. People certainly can make Facebook ads work. Mark Dawson has his course on it. And but people on Amazon shopping for books are buyers already, whereas on Facebook probably they weren't there to buy books. So I would, if you have X amount of money to spend and time to tinker with stuff, I would try the AMS ads. And you're going to find more people in KU on Amazon. It's hard. There's no way, as far as I know, on Facebook to target KU only people. You can get people that have like a Kindle in their interests, I believe, and maybe Amazon, but I don't know if you can find out if people have a KU subscription and target them specifically. I think not.
I don't think you can. I just recently boosted a post and I was, have they updated their interest stuff yet? And like, no, it's very hard to get people who are just interested in the sort of stuff that you would sell on Amazon. All right, so next question is from Tara. We've talked a little bit about this, but pricing strategies, especially for romance, especially for books that can be read as a standalone. I don't like pricing at 99 cents, but it seems to be the popular way to rank well.
Yeah, those romance categories are tough because they're so dang competitive. Even the sci-fi and like paranormal fantasy and romance versions of them. And you do see, I think in romance, you do see a lot more than 99-cent titles. And I think it's just because people are trying real hard to compete with each other, and it takes so many sales and borrows in order to stick in those top 100s. And I know they're banking on a lot of the money coming from page reads, so they actually don't even care if they get the 35-cent sale. They want the $2 they earn from somebody reading the book. So I would probably, if you don't want to jump into that, and it's perfectly understandable because that's a lot of work to have your whole catalog at 99 cents. And you'd have to kind of do the math too and see if it balances out. Like, are they 400-page novels, and what you're making from the page reads makes it not really matter what the price of the book was. And it's kind of hard to tell. You have to look at your own history. But what I did actually with my pen name when I launched that, the sci-fi romance, I did like 99 cents for the first book, and then I think they were all $3.99 after that. And for a while I made book one perma-free, and I think there's a question about this in a minute. But I started with 99 cents for book one. And then and you'll hear this a lot in romance, you'll see this is what people are doing. They kind of seed in the secondary characters in the book about the main couple in book one. So they want to read about the new characters in book two. So that's what you're depending on. And if you do that well enough that people are excited to read about that couple's journey, you can charge more. Because by then people are like, oh, I got to know what Sloane's brother is, what he's going to get up to, in book two. So I would just make your romance series however you can, introduce the new characters, don't just end book one end and never revisit those characters. People, they want a new romance in each book in romance, but they with my sci-fi series, it's a mercenary ship. So I had all these potential guys, and there were 3 women to start with. So I had 3 books set up right there, and it definitely worked. People went on and read the subsequent books in the series.
Yep. Also, I guess it makes sense if you're going to have a continuing setting. Like you talk about how a romance has to have a happily ever after. It helps to have the ever after happening in the background of the next book, so you can see, oh, look, they're still together. Speaking as a person who does not have any romances out
Yet.
yet. Okay, next, also from Tara. Any insight into sweet spots for word count, though I understand that it varies by genre?
Yeah, I assume that's going to be a romance one too. Romance is usually not epically long. You've usually only got 2 point of view characters. I would say around 80,000 for sci-fi and fantasy romance. I think I'm right in that range with my sci-fi romance pen novels, 70 to 80, 85,000. And I usually have a pretty good actual sci-fi adventure story going on too, so that there's nothing wrong with going shorter. I do see romances that are 50, 60,000 words, especially a lot of contemporary stuff is not super long. But since we're talking about KU and you're, thinking page reads, you don't want to pad anything, but it's, if this, you don't want to like restrain it either, like you might as well write it a little longer if the story itself can support that. I do think you risk people getting kind of bored and restless if you're going over 100,000 words with romance. And this is like historical romance or something where people want them to go on the cattle drive and for it to take 800 pages for them to get to Oklahoma.
All right. Next is from Jamie. Thoughts on current glitches reflecting zero or low page reads and instances of book disappearance. It seems some usually successful authors launch to silence or messed up promos. How do you handle Amazon's glitches and recover from a bad launch as a result?
There's been quite a lot of this going on this fall. It just seems like, I don't know if there's something with the servers or what, like Amazon doesn't seem aware of it, and it's very sporadic. I actually had my first case of a reader saying, hey, your book's not available. And she showed me a screenshot of Fractured Stars, which I just published at the end of September. And sure enough, it should have been for sale in the US and it wasn't. And I've had that occasionally in the past where somebody from another country tries to buy it from the Amazon.com store instead of the whatever country that Amazon wants them to shop from. But in this case, she had just bought one of my other books and was like, well, this one is not there. And so I republished it. That seemed to fix it for her. And I've heard of that fixing it for others, just this glitch with books randomly not being available right now. I have seen a couple of things you're talking about in Facebook groups where something got hosed up where the pre-order, they didn't get the most recent copy, or it just didn't launch on the day it was supposed to. It's tough. I'm kind of careful with the pre-orders myself. Usually I don't put anything up until it's like the Typo Hunter copy. Like it wouldn't be the end of the world if that went out. So it's hard to defend yourself. To defend yourself, I guess is the right word, from these kinds of things. I won't quite call them flukes because it's happening to a lot of people right now. Just little glitches in the system, and it's tough if you have all this stuff planned for launch. And all I can say is just a lot of these things anything that can be moved, just do it 2 weeks later or something. If you're really worried about it, you could just kind of have your book come out and make sure it's up and then plan everything. It's not really going to matter too much if sales are just trickling in those first few days, and then like week number 2. I mean, it may even help because Amazon kind of likes that slow build and then sustained burn rather than a whole bunch in 1 week. So
Yeah, we've had people on the show who have done silent launches, like they've had their book out for a while before actually talking about it. So, I mean, obviously we know that rumor has it that the algorithm gives you a little bit extra boost during your launch week or your launch month, but it's absolutely not necessary for you to have killed it during that time to still have a good performance. The next question is actually more of an observation on the previous question, but watching Facebook groups, feeling skittish as a newcomer, investing in marketing and promos with Amazon sort of feels like playing the stock market.
yep. I would just not put a lot of money into it right now until Joe, what did you spend, like $5 to make 50 or something?
Yeah, when I was messing like quote unquote hardcore, like when I was going through and making new ads every week, I was sneaking up on the price from below, and I spent $8 and made $78. So, but that's a handful of sales. It didn't really make a blip on any sort of thing like ranking, but it was a gigantic return on investment technically. So, I guess you can sneak up slow if you're going to do promotion and you're nervous.
So maybe you're treating them like the penny stocks, each ad you do, and then maybe you'll get one. Even
Exactly.
though it was cheap, it's doing well.
Yeah. Okay, next question is from Vale. If you're exclusive to KU on a pen name but want to release a reader magnet standalone novel set in the same world as the main series, would you make it 99 cents and exclusive for the page reads, or would you go wide just to get that book to Amazon to price match to permafree? So basically, if you're going KU with a series, should you start it with a permafree?
I actually did that with the pen name stuff for probably the first 2 months. I had the first book wide so I could make it perma-free. And in that case, it was a complete standalone story. It did, like I said, it introduced more characters that you would want to read about. But I thought if people didn't know it existed, they wouldn't know they were missing anything, which is not entirely true. But uh, I still got emailed like, why are the books 2 and 3 available on Amazon and not on Kobo? I'm like, oh, you weren't supposed to know that. So if it's a complete story, though, I think it's okay. It's always easier to promote the free stuff, and with perma-free, of course, you're not limited to 5 days a month, and you're even maybe building a readership on the other platform in case you plan to possibly go wide eventually with that series. Now, if it's not a complete story and if it's a kind of cliffhanger thing, I would not do it. You're just going to irk people. So I would just either what you can do is make it like your bonus newsletter thing and just not publish it at all. There's a lot of value in having exclusive things for the newsletter people who sign up, or just publish it on Amazon and use the 5 free days. But does that answer the question?
I would say that it does. I think one of the important things in that I sort of didn't think about when I was reading the question is when you do launch wide and make it perma-free, other people can see it, and if you have an established fan base, that can have a very negative reaction in your fan base if they only get the free one.
Yeah.
All right. So next question is from John. Since KU subscribers can't pre-order, what's a good way to get KU subscribers interested pre-launch?
That's actually a question I don't have a great answer for because I'm not big into launch parties. I mean, you can share the cover on Facebook, and if you get into that stuff, you can do it. There's no reason why you can't. But I feel like you might be just kind of blowing, let's keep this G-rated. Using up your momentum and your money on something when they actually can't order it yet. I don't really plug my pre-orders a whole lot. Sometimes I do them, especially for stuff that's going to be wide and is like I put Chains of Honor 3 up. It's coming out in February. I put that up for pre-order just so I could, because people have been asking when it's coming forever. I just went, look, the pre-order's there. It's coming. So in that case, but I don't, I'm just like, you can buy it if you want, whatever, because I think that you lose sales when you spend money directing people to a pre-order page and they're like, oh, well, screw that. I can't have it now. I don't want it. Or I'll come back later when it's available. Some people will pre-order. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just feel like I suspect the purchase rate is lower than when they can actually buy the book. So maybe show the cover and talk a little bit about it. If you do a Facebook page, if you've got followers on the social media sites, I do snippets of the next thing as I'm writing and editing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be in book 5. There's finally gonna be a dragon. There's gonna be some elves, whatever it is. So that's probably, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of money advertising a pre-order, I guess. And especially as you said in KU, it means nothing to them because they can't order it yet if they're subscribers.
Yep. Yeah, I know that I've just in general found, like, I am a big fan of pre-orders and very long pre-orders. I've used them in the past, but they are primarily useful in places that are not Amazon. Like, my Amazon pre-order experience has been more or less on par with no pre-order. So generally speaking, like, I don't put too much credence into Amazon pre-orders as a policy. And for the last question is from Beth. How do you determine that a series has run its course for page reads and should be removed from KU to go wide?
Yeah, that's always something I wrestle with a little bit, since I know I'll start making less on that series overall probably once I move it to the other sites. Although you can, at that point, it becomes easier to get a BookBub ad, so that's always a possibility, and that can really, of course, kickstart things with a new series that's in all the sites. But I tend to, once things drop out of the top 100s of the categories, I find that things peter off. Although I will say for me in Kindle Unlimited, that doesn't happen nearly as quickly as it used to. As we've been talking about this whole thing, it's just easier to get those borrows. So if you've got something else that's selling well, sometimes that too can keep the older series afloat. And there are certainly, most of the people getting those all-star bonuses have their whole catalog in KU. And so they're just never going to go wide or not until something happens that changes how much they're earning or whatever, Amazon irks them for some reason. So, but if you're going to do it, yeah, once you just kind of see that, I go more by ranking and visibility than page reads, but you just feel like, I'd rather take a shot at it somewhere else. Or if you've got readers waiting for it on the other sites. I think the most I've let stuff stay in is a year. And if it's not a huge seller, more like 6 to 9 months. I'm usually still going strong enough at 6 months that I think I've let almost everything ride for more like 9. Sometimes I forget to check the box in time too, so it ends up being a year because I was like, whoa, whoops, should have been paying attention there. It is a little hard to go wide when you have a series that released, each book a month apart. You basically have to wait till the whole thing is out, or otherwise, and it's amazing how irritated readers get because I published my Fallen Empire series as books came out, which was a bit of a mess because some of the books, because it was 8-book series, so cycles were like, some things came out at the same time, like book 5 came out at the same time as book 1 came out because it had gone in a quarter later. But I did have people email me like, why is book 7 and 8 on Amazon and I can't get it? I'm like, it's coming. It has another 30 days. So just that's something to be aware of too. I would just wait until everything is all the way out and then publish. Then you can do the rapid release thing that we've been talking about on the other sites. So there you go.
All right, and that's all the questions for this week. So I guess we're just getting to the closing. Lindsay, do you have anything to plug?
Just if you guys want to check out that story bundle and get a bunch of books, it's storybundle.com/fantasy. I think it's got about a week or a week and a half left. Lots of books, lots of good authors to check out. So if you need a pile of stuff, it's there for you.
Excellent. As for me, we've actually been debating this in the background for a while. We have had some people, one particular, very vocally, suggest that we start a Discord for the podcast here, and we don't know necessarily if it's something that a lot of people want. So we are formally asking here if people are interested in us setting up a Discord. We will warn that chances are pretty good we're not going to be incredibly active on this Discord, but it might be a useful place to, say, gather questions as we have for this episode. So if you have any thoughts on that, comment, tweet, however it's not hard to get in contact with us about whether you want to hear about it.
Right. And that's just a chat room, right? For those who
Just a
don't
chat room.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Discord is just is a chat room. It's like the old days of AOL.
right. And when we used to have the YouTube, I know people enjoyed chatting live, so those might be the folks that would be interested. So give us a holler, and
Yeah,
Joe will set it up
I
since
will set it up.
Joe's like,
Uh, yes. And
more
it'll
into
also,
it.
by the way, I suppose, theoretically possible then for us to have a running chat even on taped shows. So, like, this, for example, would have been a live show, except that we had some problems with YouTube again last time we tried to do a live show. So, for example, if we were planning to do a show that wanted to have a live Q&A, we could still do a banked show that has a live Q&A. You just wouldn't be able to see us. You just be able to talk to us. So these are things that could happen. So let us know about the Discord. As for my own plug, I guess right now, I mean, my most recent release is the Fallen Empire book. I put out Rogue Derelict. So that's the most recent book you can buy of mine. Or if you're interested in my Patreon, just again, not hard to find. I'm Joseph Arlalo, and I have a Patreon. You can put those two pieces of information together and find it. But yeah, that's all that I got for plugs. So I guess you can close us out, and then we're all done.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Hopefully something was useful, even if I'm not a top 100 Amazon paranormal romance author with a zillion 99-cent bear shifter novels in the top 100 right now. But hopefully something was useful. And let us know if you try any of this stuff and find it helpful. Have a great week. Oh, and if you're at the conference, please say hi, because as I've mentioned on the show, I'm horrible at the social stuff, and I will never walk up and introduce myself to people. So I think I'll have a name tag. And so you can find me. I'm on a couple of panels there too. So hopefully you'll come on by. Have a great week, everyone.
So long, everybody.